really enjoyed the conference today. I think one of the key messages we wanted to get across was the distinction between short-term happiness and long-term happiness, and how you can build a culture to actually, that people might not be entirely happy in the short term, but in the long run, they're feeling fulfilled. And that's what we've tried to incorporate at NextJump. Thought the day was fantastic. Thank you, Henry Stewart, for giving us the opportunity, and look forward to coming back next year.
So for us, long-term happiness means growing yourself with the purpose of helping others. I think that's one of the main things we want people to take away from today. And it's about long-term happiness, not just about short-term happiness, making people happy with small gestures.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say.
Change. Informative. Thought-provoking.
Inspiring.
It's fanatical.
Inspirado word. Inspirational.
Intriguing.
Inspiring.
Balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof.
Hi everyone, so my name's Tarun. This is my colleague Henry. We co-run NextJump's UK office, and we're talking partners, which you'll come to learn a bit more about in the coming presentation. So I think today, one of the things a perspective we'd like to share with you is really what is happiness at work. We're at a happy conference. I think we might have a slightly different perspective of what happiness is and how to implement it. So that's some context of what we're about. We've been around in business for 22 years. We call ourselves a 22-year startup. We've made a lot of mistakes, and in fact, we could probably tell you everything what not to do in running a company and running a business. So we thought, well, we were working late last night. It was about 11 p.m., trying to figure out what are we going to talk about today. And we said, if nothing else, let's share some insights, 4 insights, as to how not to run a company and how to run them. So on that, next slide please. So this is just some context of who we are. You can't really see in the top right-hand graph, it's our business growth. 4 years ago, we made a deliberate decision to invest in our culture to the point where 50% of our time at the business is, 50% of our time is spent on developing the culture of the organization. So when we'd made that change, a very drastic change back in 2012, our actual business growth went from 25% year on year to 125% year on year for the subsequent 5 years. So what we cite that to is that actually our culture has been the #1 business strategy, has been the #1 reason for our growth, and our focus on that. And actually a transformational change in our people led to a transformational change in our business. And this kind of accumulated in the last 6 months. Harvard Business Review cited NextJump as one of top 3 deliberately development organizations. That is an organization that puts its growth of its people ahead of the growth of its profits. So very humbled by that. And then really today sharing with you what kind of got us there. So next slide, please. Now, the problem with most companies and most organizations around the world is that there's an unhappiness problem. There's 71% of the workforce is disengaged. I believe millennial generation is really putting a strain on demanding more than just a paycheck from going into work. And with millennial generation now contributing 50% of the workforce, this is only really getting worse. And what people cite, what we also can kind of relate to in terms of an unhappy workplace, people cite a lack of growth, a lack of development, a lack of purpose, poorly run recognition schemes, no fun at times, office politics. And this, I think, is what we've really tried to, going deep into office politics, what we call the lying, hiding, faking problem. This is an extract taken from a book, from the Everyone Culture, which I'll read out. In the ordinary organization, most people are doing a second job no one's even paying them for. They're spending time and energy covering up their weaknesses, managing other people's favorable impressions of them, showing themselves to their best advantage, playing politics, hiding their inadequacies, uncertainties, and limitations. This is the single biggest loss of precious resources organizations face, and is no less catastrophic for being so common. Imagine saying, I don't know what I'm doing. If you did, one of 2 things would happen. You'd either get fired or it would affect your compensation. This is the problem we've been looking to remedy with our culture. Next slide, please. So what do we mean by happiness? And this is where we look at happiness through the long-term sense of the word. And what we define by that is what we call, Henry? Hello? what we call, and one more, yeah. We call it better me plus better you equals better us. And that's how we define our culture. And what that means in very simplistic terms is our culture is a focus on personal growth and personal development, that's better me, for the purpose of helping others, better you, is equal to happiness and fulfillment in the workplace. It's very simple, it's quite American, but this is what we came to, and you'd be surprised. I cannot begin to describe how impactful this moment was in our existence at Next Jump. This happened in 2012. We called Better Me, Better You, Better Us. As soon as we did this, over 50 initiatives started at the company, either falling into Better Me or Better You. And this was grassroots. People would start public speaking classes, a Better Me initiative. We started doing initiatives like Code for a Cause, where any engineer could code a project to help their community for 3 weeks. That was a Better You project. So all of a sudden, just by articulating our culture, articulating our why, articulating our purpose, we helped change our words into actions so that actually our employees could live and breathe our culture. So, yes, thank you. So I said, I'm going to forget something, so give me can you signal to me if I forget it? And you just did that, so thank you. So when we were here last night, we said, what are the stories that we can share that would be hopefully quite helpful? There are 4 stories we want to share with you today, around 4 things, guiding principles of workplace culture. So the first one's balance. The second one is, the first one's safety. The second one's balance. No, I got that, there we go. The first one, take 3. I'm on my 4th coffee. No, excuse me. First one's safety. The second one is feedback. The third one is purpose. And the 4th one is recognition. And these are the 4 stories that I think when we look back at our time at Next Jump and how we've grown as individuals and as leaders, the things that we've learned the most about. So if you go to the next slide. So number 1 is safety. We've spoken a lot today about how do you give trust to your employees? How do you allow them to fail? How do you create the right environment where they can do that? The number 1 insight, the number 1 lesson we've come to is people operate best when they feel safe. It's very simple. It's common sense. But there's a disconnect between saying that and actually meaning it. So let me show how if I had to describe this period in Next Jump's growth, I'd call this how we ran the Unhappy Manifesto. And I'll show what we did. So we started in 1994 as a college coupon business. So pretty much if you studied at the University of Harvard in New York, you would get 20% off your pizza coupon. And that was our business. We slowly realized that students don't have a lot of money, so it wasn't the most profitable business. So we moved into the employee space, people with jobs, and we grew up to 150 Next Jumpers. We rode the dot-com bubble. Then in 2001, 2002, the dot-com crash happened. We went from 150 employees to 4 employees. And bear in mind, how we had built the business was through friends and families of the co-founders. So I think someone had to fire their wife, fire your best friends, 150 to 4. And the first, I was looking through the Happy Manifesto. Who can tell me rule number 4? Be open and transparent. And what happened was that we were not open and transparent with how we ran the business. So when we had to go from 150 to 4, everyone was shocked. So the lesson from that, after that point, that was back in 2002, every Monday we disclosed every financial within the company to the whole organization. Because we learned the price of not being open and transparent when we had to go down from 150 employees to 4 employees. We slowly grew back up. We actually we bought out our nearest competitor. We managed to just survive the dot-com crash. And we grew back. In 2006, we said we're going to hire the best and brightest people around. And lo and behold, we hired these people. They're super smart. But what we didn't do was hire for aptitude. We hired for skills. And what we had was this army of brilliant jerks. What I mean by that, they were great people. But if you think of rowing in a boat, and everyone's rowing in a different direction, and the boat's not going anywhere, that's the situation we were in. So we had to fire those people again. And we went down from 100, I think 150, 200 employees to about 80, 90, through a huge firing process. So the lesson we learned there was to hire for aptitude, not for skill, because the missing ingredient, someone mentioned character earlier, but I'd go a step deeper for that. The missing ingredient was humility. We did not have humility in our hiring process, and that's the number one thing we screen for now. So that was the second lesson. But now what we had done in our course of a 15-year history at that point was we had created a culture of fear. We'd had 2 big firing rounds in our company. We'd refined our hiring process so we could get the right people. And then, once we got the right people, we implemented a no-fire policy. And this was back in 2012. And I'd love to tell you that the no-fire policy was a very deliberate means to get the outcome. Because actually, if you plot out a graph and you plot where the no-fire policy of revenue and you plot where the no-fire policy happened, that was actually the inflection point where revenues increased at an exponential rate. And I'd love to tell you that was the desired consequence. It wasn't. The reason we implemented a no-fire policy is because someone asked the CEO, you say next jumpers are like your family, would you fire your son? And then he came back the next day and said, we're implementing a no-fire policy. But what 3, I'd say, unanticipated outcomes came off the back of that. One is that people were a lot more vulnerable, a lot more willing to talk about their weaknesses, celebrate their mistakes than ever before. 2, people were risk-taking at a much greater level. The fear of failure was gone. We'd shown our employees that we trust them. And we mean, when we say you can screw up, we actually mean it. And the third point is that our hiring processes are now exceptionally high because now we hire for life. There's no get-out clause. So our hiring processes have increased to the point where almost everyone needs to say yes before someone can come in. So that is a first story about safety. But look, I just want to say one important point here, is that I am not suggesting that a no-fire policy should be implemented by every company in this room. That's not what I'm saying. For Next Jump, at that point, at that juncture in the development of our business, that was right for us. That's not right for most companies in the world. However, the lesson there is building a culture of safety. So with that, first discussion point, what are the other ways to develop safety in the workplace? I think give 2 minutes and we'll come back.
You would be very discerning, wouldn't you? You'd be very discerning about it.
Okay, so I've got the cowbell. Thank you again. So let's just go to 2 tables and talk about what you came up with for other ways to create safety in the workplace. Who wants to start? Anyone want to? Hands up over here.
So one of the things we have in our workplace is we have a policy where it's, if you're ever in a situation where you think this is unsafe, I don't want to do this, then if you say, no, I don't want to do this, the company will stand by you on that decision. So so you have that trust from your company. So I feel comfortable if I'm ever in a situation thinking, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but I need to do it to make my manager happy or anything. I know that, no, I don't want to do this, this isn't safe, and my company will stand by me.
Cool. Anyone else want to share? One on the table? Yeah.
Okay, we're discussing this. I suppose you could wear high-vis jackets in work, but that's a different safety type of thing. But I think when you look at some of the countries in the world that are happiest countries in the world, the likes of the Danish and the Nordic countries and that kind of stuff, and one of the things they've got is they've got very good safety nets in their societies where people don't feel stressed if they lose their job, if they've got to go to get healthcare, or if they've got to go to university. All that stuff is supplied. And I think in the workplace, the less stressed we feel, so the things that we put in place to stop us feeling stressed, and one of the things we talked about is contracts. Some companies have very short contracts for people who work for them. Some people are working on 0 contract hours, and I can't imagine that they feel safe at any stage. So it's about valuing the people that work for you in many ways by, you know, giving them some sort of stress-free safety and a knowledge that the company is doing everything to try and ensure that they feel best about themselves. It's not just about contracts. It's also about, like, when we're stressed in work, are we at our best? Never at our best. We can't be creative. The parts of our brain shut down and all sorts of things happen. So I think safety in the workplace or feeling less stressed is something every company should be fighting for. Yeah.
Great, okay, thanks.
Right? Anybody else?
You do the slides? Thanks. Okay, so the second lesson and story I guess we want to go into, we've had a next jump, is on talking partners. So imagine that you had someone at work who's as invested in your own growth as you are. We've had a lot of people talking today about having a best friend at work, how it helps engagement, how it helps you at work. We've implemented this across the whole company at NextJump. So everyone at NextJump, Tarun and I, it's what we call our talking partner initiative. So Tarun and I are talking partners. And what that means is that we have shared ownership. So Tarun and I both run our UK office together. That's our shared ownership and shared responsibility. It's co-mentorship. So Tarun and I are, as I said, invested in each other's growth. We both identify areas of development for each other. We both push each other into situations where we think, so I will push Tarun into situations where I think he will be able to grow and develop, and he will do the same for me. It's basically about, we push each other for greatness and to be greater than we are already. Now this is done across the whole company. So we have 30 people in the UK. Everyone in the UK has a talking partner. Same in the US. Now, I believe this has been one of the biggest drivers for growth at NextJump, simply because when you're running a business or when you're running a team, the decisions you make are hard decisions. I think we can all relate to that. But the idea of talking partners is to create a decision-making machine. So the decisions that I make with Tarun. The decisions that Tarun makes, I make with him. So we're really using our combined knowledge, our combined responsibility to make decisions and become a decision-making machine for what we own. Now, this is mostly about the feedback that we give each other throughout that whole process. But the feedback is not just through talking partners. We have a lot of different initiatives built into NextJump around feedback. It's really baked into our culture. Now, talking partners is one way. I want to talk to you about how feedback has affected and helped me at NextJump. So around 9 months ago, I was voted on, as Henry said, to MV21, the leadership team at NextJump. And with the increased responsibility, I felt the increased stress, and I found that my weaknesses were coming out a lot more, particularly in stuff like leadership meetings. So every month, we have a leadership meeting, and I was finding it very difficult to speak up and give my own opinion. I was finding that I was sitting in meetings worrying about, if I ask a question, if I speak up, what will other people think? Will people think I'm not good enough for this, that my question's the wrong question, that I'm not smart enough? And that stopped me from speaking up. Now, after each leadership meeting that we have, after each MV21 meeting, we have a feedback app, and all the leaders input feedback into the app. So I'm just going to read out the feedback that I got from one of those meetings. So Henry needs to surround himself with honest circle of real-time feedback. Does not meet expectations. Did you speak up at all? Felt uncertain and wasn't passionate. So this is consistent feedback that I received for pretty much my first 3 months as part of the leadership team at NextJump. Now, this was difficult feedback to hear, and in the short term, this feedback did not make me happy. It was quite a difficult time for me. But what I found after the third meeting we had, the third time I was getting this feedback, I started reflecting on, okay, how is this really affecting me? Is it just affecting me at work? I saw how it was affecting me at home with friends. So in social situations, when I'm sitting around with a group of friends, I don't bring up my own opinions. I would just sit there and build on what other people are saying and let other people lead the conversation. And I reflected on how it's affected me at home and with my family. So I want to tell you a bit about my story and kind of my life growing up. So this is my parents and our dog a few years ago. Now, growing up, I was always supported by my parents, so in every way, financially, through education, except in one thing. I came out to my parents as gay when I was 16. And I remember very clearly the conversation I had with my dad. Now, we were sitting in a car, it was a 10-minute car journey. We were talking about it, and for the first 10 minutes, it was a discussion. So he was asking me questions about it, I was talking to him about it. But gradually, it got to the stage where I felt like I wasn't getting through to him. And he was, I felt like I wasn't getting through to him, and I felt like he wasn't listening to me. Now, this basically led me to just shut down in that situation. I just stopped speaking up, I stopped saying anything. And we sat outside the house, in the car, for 2 hours while this carried on. He was talking to me about it, telling me why it was a bad decision, why I shouldn't make this choice. Now, I don't blame my dad for that. That's obviously not great parental advice, but he didn't have the support network. This was new to him. He thought he was trying to protect me, so I don't blame my dad for that at all. But what the lesson I took from that, this didn't just happen in one conversation. This happened over a period of several months. We'd keep having the same conversations. The same thing would happen. I'd just shut down and stop talking. So the lesson I took was, if you want to be accepted, because I've been accepted in every other way, then don't speak up. So I took that learning, that lesson, right through into my adult life, right through into being a leader at Next Jump, and this lesson stuck with me. Now, when I started to think about this, and when I realized this a few months ago, I started to think really quite profound how much that situation has affected me, and I wanted to start to see other situations that people have been in where they'd had a similar story. So I started actually looking on TED for different stories, and I found this TED talk by a guy called Andrew Solomon called Love No Matter What. And it was really the first couple of minutes which struck me very clearly. Beginning, he starts off the whole talk with a quote from Time magazine in 1966. And to paraphrase the article, it basically says that homosexuality is a disease not worth curing. He said, this is an article published in 1966, 50 years ago, and now we have gay marriage legalized in many different countries across the world. How did we get from there to here? And I'm watching this video, and I quite clearly think, well, because everyone spoke up and said what they believed in. And I suddenly realized, it dawned on me, to the point where I actually got quite upset, because I realized everything that I've been doing at work, with my friends, at home, is a complete disservice to everyone who spoke up about homosexuality when it wasn't accepted, everyone who said, no, this is right, this should be accepted by society. Now, that's given me, that whole idea of me not speaking up in meetings is a huge disservice to everyone who did speak up before me. Now, where this has helped me is it's giving me now a narrative for I need to change. People have done this in the past, I need to do it for them. And this is what I'm using to change the lesson of my narrative. Now, the thing that strikes me really is that the feedback that I got in the beginning of the story, did not make me happy. Short term, quite upset by it. Not a happy time to get that feedback. But actually, in the long run, this has helped me with work, it's helped me with my friends, it's helped me create a much stronger relationship with my parents. So really, in the long term, I'm a lot happier for the feedback that I got, even though at the time it felt like a very unhappy situation to be in. So that's really where kind of the long-term, this idea of long-term happiness has helped me.
So I think that So I think the key lesson and insight from that is how can you bake feedback into a consistent part of your employee culture. I think it's Henry's story. I've gone through this story. Henry shared that, by the way, in front of the whole company. Shared my own story in front of the whole company, where we use that the feedback is not short-term happiness, but it's for the long-term happiness, what we describe as better me and better you. And that's what we bake into the things we do and how we do it. So the third story I want to share is one around purpose. Purpose gets thrown out a lot. And I think the key lesson, the spoiler alert, if you like, is giving back should be aligned with what your employees want to give back to. So I'm going to share a story with you about an initiative we run called Adopt a School. I think 13 months ago, we ran a survey to our employees saying, what do you care about? It's not a most sophisticated survey. And the number one thing that came back was children's health and children's education. Go to the next part. This is a screenshot of an email sent from our CEO. I'll just read out a bit. How about if we adopt a public school? Not actually move them in, but they become our baby. We care about education, plus care about children's health and wellness. If I recall, there are 150,000 public schools in the country. Could we create a movement challenging every for-profit to adopt a single public school? Take care of them, help them, their staff, their students. So, a month after our survey, our Adopt a School initiative was born. By the way, the subject line, this is just an idea. He goes, idea, crazy or awesome? Question mark. And this is to our leadership team. Everyone responded, crazy and awesome, crazy and awesome, crazy and awesome. And so our Adopt a School program was born. 3 months later, we adopted a school called PS119, a school where 75% of the kids are below the poverty line. They had recently had to shut down their after-school program. And it was this horrible cycle because the parents were having to quit their jobs to take their kids from the after-school because the school didn't have the after-school program. The teachers didn't have the extra income from teaching then, and the kids didn't have the opportunity to grow and develop. So we reopened the after-school program at PS119 to the point where every next jumper now spends a Thursday a month actually teaching a curriculum for young kids to inspire them to do more. So for instance, we've got our engineers teaching 11 and 11-year-olds robotics. We've got a health and wellness class. So every next jumper spends a Thursday a month actually being involved in the program. For me personally, this is an incredibly fulfilling, I can't even begin to describe how fulfilling this. Well, I was actually in New York in May when we went to go speak to the schools to find out the one we were going to adopt. The head teacher had to run out mid-meeting because the head teacher was also the head plumber, and the bathroom was over-flooding with crap. He also had to attend to a kid who passed out because he didn't have enough money. His parents didn't have enough money to feed him. I can't tell you how fulfilling, how rewarding it is to be a part of that, to lead that project here in the UK, to actually try and create this movement to help inspire other businesses to take a part in this. In the UK, there are 20,000 state-funded schools. If we get every organisation with more than 50 employees to adopt a school, that would cover all state-funded schools in the country. We're currently working with organisations, including the Bransons, the Ofsted Chair, to make this an actual global initiative. But the lesson there, and by the way, the lesson for us is that we try to do purpose by giving paychecks, by to random things, to random initiatives, like a tick of the box exercise. But what we found most successful with purpose is doing things that our employees care about. And I think this for me is something that really, really resonated when coming up with stories.
Okay, so the final lesson is on recognition. And this is really around incentivizing the behaviors that recognizing the behaviors that you want to incentivize. So I'm going to tell you what our highest honor at Next Jump was, and then what it is now. So we used to have something, you can't see the note there, but we used to have something called the President's Award. It was awarded by the CEO to the employee who signed the best sales deal or made basically the company the most money. Now, what that behavior that incentivized was a very selfish way of working. I need to make sure that I do everything that I can to get this award. So that wasn't the behavior that we wanted to incentivize our employees to do. What we actually wanted to incentivize was servant leadership within our company. We wanted to incentivize helping others. So we changed the award, and now the highest honor at Next Jump is something called the Avengers Award. And in fact, throughout our whole recognition scheme, the one key question we ask everyone is, who helped you succeed? Who helped you the most? So to get this award, you have to help others. So now we're incentivizing people to help others and have servant leadership. Now I could tell you the story of our Avenger Ceremony, but I think it's much more powerful if we can actually show you the video. If we have audio, do we have audio? So we're going to try something. We're going to try the audio. So this is our Avenger Ceremony, which we hold once a year. It's a company event, so the whole company flies out to New York. And leading up to this event, for about 3 months before, we start collecting stories from around the company of who's helped you the most. We have a panel, we have people interviewing, and it's all peer voted. Now, what I'm going to show you is the CEO introducing, I'm just going to move the video over here. Okay. The CEO is going to introduce the top Avenger, and then you'll see kind of how it unfolds.
Of the Avengers Award is Corey.
There's about, there's all the employees and about probably 200 to 300 people in this stand, and everyone stands up and gives a standing ovation to Gory, who walks up to the front.
Corey? We have a surprise for you. Your parents are here. Your parents are here. They've just flown in from India. I am honored to introduce Gauri Lakshmi Narayanan as the 2013 Avengers winner. Gauri is an Avenger because he is always there for you. He is incredibly loyal, infectiously sweet, and helps you accomplish anything. In his 5 years at Next Jump, he has come to the aid of many, and likely while doing so, has made you laugh or tell you something about the game of chess, his great passion. I don't think that there is another person filled with as much goodness as Gauri. It is a pure quality. Nokia, his manager, describes it as the ability to help with his whole heart. So let me tell you a story about how Gauri is always there for you. On the night of Hurricane Sandy, I'm working from home and encounter a problem on an email campaign I'm building for a client launch that's on the West Coast. At this point, everyone has gone home, is offline, prepping to brave the storm. But I take a chance and I go online and I see a green dot next to Gauri's name, because I swear there's always a green dot next to his name. I ask if he's available to help me. He quickly replies and starts helping me with my problem online. But then his green dot turns red. A few minutes later, my phone rings. It's Gauri. I'm sorry, the internet's gone out here in Jersey. I'm calling. I hope that's okay. We begin troubleshooting over the phone. Then he pauses and he says, "Oh, I can see Manhattan. It's just gone dark." And then he goes back into one-on-one troubleshooting my problem. A few minutes later, he pauses again and goes, "Oh, my power has just gone out. The end is near, Rachel. What else can I help you with?" I mean, the Northeast is completely shutting down, and he probably would have drained his phone battery and leapt across buildings if I'd asked him to. He is that dedicated. An Avenger is someone who will go to battle for you day in and day out. In stormy skies, they stick around. In the face of an apocalypse, Gauri is there by your side, selflessly serving you with a smile. Gauri, I know that you would sacrifice yourself before allowing any next jumper to be checkmated. We want to recognize you for this incredible steward leadership. Charlie will now pin Gory with his Avengers medal. Please join me in congratulating him in recognition as the 2013 Avengers winner, the highest honor at Next Jump.
Every time I watch that video, even now it's still emotional. It's one of my favorite events at Next Jump. It's such an emotional day. So I guess to conclude, the things we covered, the idea of what we see as long-term happiness at Next Jump, growing yourself for the purpose of helping others, and the 4 lessons that we have from that. First is safety. People work at their best when they feel safe. Feedback, baking it into everything in your culture, and sometimes short-term unhappiness can breed real long-term happiness. Purpose, do things that you're when you're giving back, give back on things that your employees actually care about, and then on recognition, incentivize the behaviors that you want to recognize the behaviors that you want to incentivize. So I think that's do you have anything to add? Cool. So we will open up the floor to any questions that anyone has. Can we? Thanks.
Thanks, guys. I thought that was a truly inspirational presentation. It really was absolutely superb. And even though I wasn't there, I was feeling the lump in the throat on the presentation there. I have 2 questions. First of all, the co-worker idea, which I really like. Do you get to choose your co-worker, your mentor or joint worker? And the second one is a selfish one. We run a school that fits your bill. If you're sponsoring schools in London, we'd love to talk to you. But for your first question.
Talking partners, it first actually started out with the CEOs. We have co-CEOs now, and talking partners started with them. So everything we do at Next Jump is kind of this framework of one all. So you make it work for yourself, make it work for someone else, and then start putting it, scaling it, to the rest of the company. So Charlie and Megan, our co-CEOs, now started doing talking partners, and then the leadership team below them started having talking partners. When we saw that was working, we scaled it out to the rest of the company. Now, you do, to a certain extent, choose who your talking partner is, but we have some guidelines of how to choose, basically. So what we say is you want to have shared responsibility. So, for instance, it wouldn't necessarily work if Tarun was talking partners with someone that started 6 months ago, because that's going to be a one-way mentorship program for Tarun mentoring them. Now, it should be co-mentorship program, so shared responsibility really helps with that. The other thing which we try and encourage is people who are quite different. So Tarun and I are very different people. We have very different characters, and that helps because I see where Tarun's lacking and Tarun sees where I'm lacking. Now, sometimes talking partners, sometimes people work better. There's other elements in there like trust. I think one of the most important things about talking partners is being authentic with each other and being able to bring anything up. So if you can have a trusting relationship, then that can be the first start. But generally, yeah, you kind of choose yourself. And yes, let's talk afterwards about the other skills.
Yeah, likewise, fantastic. Thank you so much. You mentioned about recruiting for humility. Can you offer some tips on what that means in practice?
So humility. Humility is actually one of my favorite interviews to do. We hire for 3 things at Next Jump. As you say, humility is the main one. When I think about humility, I normally ask 2 questions. So that's, what's your biggest failure? What do you see as your biggest failures? And I normally try and go through a few examples. And then, why did it fail? Why did those situations fail? Now, someone who is humble in those situations will be able to look at themselves and see why they let themselves or the team down in that situation. So that's one measuring stick of humility. And the second is, what are your biggest successes? And then, again, someone on the humble side is, rather than, I was just so smart in that situation that, I did great in it, versus my tutor helped me a lot in that situation, or someone at home, or the team helped me in that situation. So someone who's humble, the failures they will see as down to themselves, and they will be able to reflect on why it was there, down to them. And the successes, they'll be able to reflect on who actually helped them get to that level.
Thanks, Jed. Fantastic talk. I love the feedback app after the meetings. I wish that's a brilliant idea. Is that anonymous from your leadership meetings? And how do you kind of encourage people to be, are people diplomatic, are people rude, or do you have a sort of, what's the culture in your company in how they give that feedback, I guess?
Yeah, so it is anonymous. We find that, especially for newer people, that allows them to be much more honest. So a lot of the feedback that we have through apps is anonymous. And in terms of, it's never, you give feedback to others in a way that you'd want to receive it yourself. So no one's out there to be malicious, no one's out there to hurt you. So the feedback that goes in there is often constructive or honest. I think that's the most important things, is that, one, it's honest. So did you even speak up at all? Maybe that's not constructive. Constructive could be you could have spoken up more, or given your opinion more, but it's honest, and that's, I think, the most important thing. So it's actually I think 10 minutes at the end of the meeting where everyone's sitting in across 3 different countries, or 2 different countries, 3 different offices, on their phones, typing away. But what's incredible is the level of consistency of feedback that happens in that 10 minutes. And the reason we put it in the meeting is because we don't want people to leave, to forget, to go on to other things. We have it at the end of the meeting. So it doesn't, you just go through, so the only thing you need to do in that 10 minutes is just give feedback on other people. It's not to sit there and refresh your own page, it's to give feedback on other people in the meeting. But the level of consistency, no one's talking, but the level of consistency, even down to the same words that people use, is quite shocking sometimes.
Okay, thank you very much. That was...